Hello, everyone. We are starting our next read aloud. Today, we're going to be reading a picture book of Eleanor Roosevelt. It's by David A. Adler, illustrated by Robert Casilla. So, you've recognized David A. Adler. We've read a few books by him. This is a biography of the woman who was America's first lady from 1932 to 1945. Meaning, so she was the wife of one of our presidents, and his name was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. But even though she was the wife, she was known as like first lady, wife of a president. She was an amazing woman. She did so much for our country. Just a really truly inspirational person. While we're reading this today, we're going to be focusing on this goal. I should say these two goals. We have our reading and our social studies goal. Let's read it, and I can determine. Ready? I can determine or figure out the main idea of a text and key details for support. Remember that main idea means like a one sentence, big idea, and key details are the most important facts. So we're going to be trying to get those really most important, biggest key details about her. And we're going to use that today for our social studies goal. Let's read it together and I can explain. Ready? I can explain how specific, certain people have done important actions or things to help change the world around them in history, so past events. And as we are doing those goals today, we're going to be doing this for Schoology today. We are going to be doing a summary. We're working on a summary. So I'm going to show you what our graphic organizer looks like. Make sure you send it to Notability. Now you're going to see create new note. Top right corner, hit import. This is something that we usually do during fiction, but a lot of biographies are written kind of like a story. So you can do summaries like this as well. First thing we're going to do is make sure I get my name up on top. Okay? Now, we did this for that very first week of distance learning, but I'm just going to go through this just to make sure we remember everything about this. So it's two columns. First column is key information. Somebody. Who is the main person in your book? Wanted. What is the main person's goal? But. What is the conflict or problem getting in the way of the person's goal? So. How did the person try to solve the problem? Then. What was the resolution or ending? And so then the second column, we're going to be filling these blanks. Blank, wanted, but, so then. And then down below, we're actually rewrite the whole full summary. But going to be just thinking about this, especially kind of the somebody, what was a goal or a problem, as we get started. Eleanor Roosevelt was born in New York City on October 11th, 1884. Her parents, Anna and Elliot, were wealthy. They had many servants, a home in the city, and a large summer house in the country. Eleanor's mother was beautiful, but Eleanor was not a pretty child. She was tall and awkward and also very quiet. She often looked so serious that her mother called her Granny. Eleanor hated that nickname. Eleanor's father called her Little Golden Hair and his Little Nell. Eleanor loved those names and she loved her father. So you can just tell she maybe had a better relationship or a better connection to her father. When Eleanor was just 8 years old, her mother died. Eleanor went to live with her in her grandmother's house. 2 years later, in 1894, Eleanor's father died too. Eleanor missed him terribly and dreamed of him often. There were many rules in her grandmother's house. Eleanor could not read in bed before breakfast. She had to wear long black stockings and high buttoned shoes even in the summer. Eleanor was cared for by a servant, Madeline, who often screamed at her. Sometimes she even pulled Eleanor's hair. So even just from these 12 pages, you can see she had some hard things happen to her when she was very young. When Eleanor was 15, she was sent to Allenswood, a boarding school in England. She was happy to go. She felt she was starting a new life. The teachers and students at Allenswood thought Eleanor was wonderful. The headmistress wrote home that Eleanor had a pure heart. She taught Eleanor the importance of helping others. So that's kind of a cool thing. Boarding school, if you learned about boarding schools, that's a place where you actually live. It's kind of like when some people, when they go off to college, they actually live at their college. So it's kind of like, but this would have been more like high school for her now. So she's actually like living at this school. While Eleanor was in England, her uncle, Theodore Roosevelt, became the President of the United States. He was a very strong and popular leader. Eleanor returned to New York in 1902. She was almost 18 years old. Eleanor's grandmother sent her from one fancy party to the next. Eleanor usually hated those parties, but she did have a good time when she talked with her distant cousin, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Eleanor joined the Junior League and began a lifelong devotion to helping the poor. While working for the Junior League, Eleanor taught children to dance and exercise in the Rivington Street Settlement House. Eleanor took her cousin Franklin to the settlement house. Franklin took her to college football games at his school. They fell in love. On March 17, 1905, Eleanor and Franklin were married. At the wedding, the guests paid little attention to the bride and groom. They were more interested in Eleanor's uncle, President Theodore Roosevelt. Eleanor and Franklin had 6 children, 1 daughter and 5 sons. One son died when he was still an infant. Eleanor had servants and nurses to help her. At times, the children were afraid of the strict nurses, and so was Eleanor. Franklin's mother, Sarah, often told Franklin and Eleanor what to do. Sarah chose their first house and furniture. During the early years of their marriage, Eleanor didn't complain, but later she refused to be bossed around. So definitely you can see like becoming more assertive, sticking up for herself more. Franklin admired Eleanor's uncle Theodore and wanted to be just like him. Eleanor helped Franklin campaign for public office, so trying to get into office to become, to either, you could do lots of different things, even like just become like being part of like city council or becoming a mayor or like larger jobs like becoming a senator. In 1921, Franklin was stricken with polio. Remember when we read about Helen Keller, same thing had happened to her. He couldn't walk after that. When Franklin first became sick, Eleanor was his nurse. Later, she went to political meetings and traveled for him. She brought back detailed reports on what she heard and saw. So a very important. She was doing a lot of the jobs for her husband when he couldn't. Franklin was elected governor of New York in 1828 and 1930 and president of the United States in 1932. He was reelected president in 1936, 1940, and 1944. When Franklin became president, Eleanor became first lady. And you'll notice during our government unit, we learned that you can only be elected twice. After people loved Franklin Delano Roosevelt as their president, and so they elected him so many times. After him, though, they made a law saying that you could only be elected twice, just so that wouldn't happen again. Just going to check how long our video is going here quick, everyone. Okay, we're still good. In the 1930s, this was the time of the Great Depression. Banks and factories had closed. Millions of people had lost their jobs. Hungry people stood in long lines for free bread and soup. It was a difficult time to be president or first lady. Eleanor didn't wait to do things. Her motto was, "Tomorrow is now." She had a radio program and wrote a daily newspaper column. She traveled to cities, towns, farms, and into coal mines. She brought hope to millions of people. Eleanor used the money she earned from her speeches and writings to help the poor. Eleanor spoke out for women's rights, the rights of Indians, the homeless, young people, and minorities. She told people, "Do what you feel in your heart to be right." Eleanor always did. Eleanor belonged to the Daughters of the American Revolution. In 1839, they would not allow a great singer, Marian Anderson, to perform in their hall because she was black. Eleanor quit the group and arranged for Marian Anderson to sing in front of the Lincoln Memorial instead. On December 7, 1941, the United States Armed Forces were attacked at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The United States entered the Second World War. During the war, Eleanor traveled all over the world to visit American soldiers. When she came home, she brought messages from the soldiers to their families. On April 12, 1945, President Franklin Roosevelt died. The whole country mourned or was saddened with Eleanor. Eleanor moved out of the White House. She was no longer the First Lady, but she did not retire from public life. Life was meant to be lived, she said. The war ended a few months later, and Eleanor worked to ensure peace. She was the United States representative at the new United Nations, where leaders from all over the world could meet and discuss their differences. Eleanor said, "If we are to live together, we have to talk." That is a huge job. The United Nations, or the UN, is where leaders from different countries come together to talk peacefully. It's trying to definitely to prevent war or other violence to happen. And she was when it says representative, each country usually just sends like a couple people, but usually like one leader, and it's not the president, it's always somebody different, and they chose her, so a really, really important job. While Eleanor was at the United Nations, she was the chairperson of the Commission on Human Rights. She was always busy. "You must do the thing you think you cannot do," she said. Eleanor Roosevelt died on November 7th, 1962. She was the most important, most loved woman of her time. President Harry S. Truman called her the First Lady of the world. And you can even just see on the back here just some important dates, could be used for a timeline. But I'm going to stop there. I'm going to show you, real quick again, the things that we're going to be trying to fill out here. So somebody who's the main person in the book, what did they want? So what is the main person's goal? What do they want? What's the conflict or problem getting in the way of the person's goal? But how did the person try to solve the problem? So, and what was the resolution or ending? Okay, and I'll see you back. I want you thinking about that before you watch the next video, and you can check against my thinking.